Can you guys hear my jams?
I can.
Do you see the looping
Yes.
video? Okay, cool.
A little laggy.
I was gonna say it's a little laggy.
Yeah, it's because my computer has also at the same time trying to start the stream.
Yeah, makes sense.
It takes a few seconds and then it should smooth up. There we go. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. We're at 4 o'clock. So, all right, let's get started. Welcome everyone. This is the ISUGD virtual senior show frontier panel on equity, diversity, and accessibility. We have Kaitlyn and Brandon who are gonna give their presentations today. The format for this is going to be, first they will give their presentations and then afterwards we will have a discussion. So if you have questions or comments or anything that you wanna inject into the discussion, if you're in Zoom, please feel free to enter it in the text chat there. If you're watching us live streaming on YouTube, please feel free to enter the comments there and I will inject them into the discussion afterwards. Also, at the end of the presentations, anybody on the Zoom channel, you'll have the ability to unmute yourself and you can join in the conversation that way. So with that, Kaitlyn, why don't we kick it off with you? So we will turn off our videos and mute our microphones and you go ahead and share your screen.
Okie dokie. Whew. Here we go. How we look? Full screen?
Looks great.
Cool. Hi, my name is Kaitlyn Sanchez, and I am super ecstatic to share with you today Diverse People of Design, or more specifically, the D podcast.
Hi, and welcome to Diverse
People of Design.
My very first official question for you is, who are you?
That is a good question.
That's a really hard question.
I think saying that I'm a creator is the piece that sums it up the best.
I am Catholic. I am Filipino, 100%.
I'm a woman. I'm an artist.
I am Brazilian.
Welcome to the D podcast.
Because we like to talk big, right?
Right.
Hi, and welcome.
So, why diverse people of design? That's a big question for Capstone. And honestly, diverse people of design has been a passion project of mine for about 2 years. It all kind of started sophomore year when we watched the Helvetica movie. And it just kind of made me realize that in school, we were learning about a very specific culture and genre of design. And when I looked around at my peers, I saw a lot more. And there were so many beautiful differences between us. And I really wanted a way to showcase them. And additionally, I wanted something very inclusive. One of my Strengths Finders 2.0 is includer. So our tagline is no exclusions, let's talk big. And lastly, accessibility is just something that I am very passionate about. I'm a little bit of hard of hearing and I have glasses, I can't see without them. So making sure that it's accessible to anyone and everyone is just another layer to this project. Overall though, the branding was incredibly an uphill battle because I had this grandiose plan of what I would love diverse people of design to become one day, its own fleshed out business. So I really had for Capstone to scale back a little bit and really focus on one comprehensive component. So I chose the podcast portion. And this is the mark I landed on. I intend to go even further in the future to build a more expansive brand from this. But in general, I wanted to keep a couple constants. So the typeface is the Montserrat font family, and the color palette has barely changed since from the beginning. I had started with a baby pink, but that's now transitioned into a maroon because I wanted a color palette that wasn't necessarily already affiliated or associated with a specific community now. So the big question that I start with is, who are you? It's pretty simple, it's 3 words, but I think it's so telling what someone's immediate gut reaction is to this question. It really shows you what is salient to them, how they see themselves, and what's important. But I think it also beautifully illustrates the differences among us and how we can celebrate those and how we're all individuals, especially just the different combinations of our different identities that we are built up into. And so what are your identities and pronouns? Typically, when I enlist someone to be on the podcast, their first question to me through email is, what questions are you going to ask me so I can prepare beforehand? But I like the raw casualness, the unscripted answer, because I think it is more revealing. And so instead of giving them a list of questions to prepare for, I like to give them an identity wheel. And just from jobs and positions I've held on campus and classes on diversity I've taken, I've just realized how most of these are uncontrollable factors. Most of them are things that we're just born with, and the environmental things that we are put into. And whether we are conscious or not, a lot of them influence the way that we perceive the world. And I wanted to do a real study on how does our identities influence our work, or does it? And do we think it does? So for example, Cameron Gray is someone I've had the honor of working with on this project, and he is very salient with his Black identity. And he does so many phenomenal gallery shows digging deeper into his Blackness and what does it feel like and his experiences. And then Maddie Ryan, she is, you heard her in the little welcome promo. She says, I'm a woman, and she utilizes that identity into this campaign of #BeautyMark to really go deeper into self-confidence of women and the things that women struggle with. And originally, Diverse People of Design was going to be more video focused, but with the current situation, I was able to only get 2 headshots. So this is Victoria Fachine Herman, and then next we have Jordan Brooks. And I really wanted the focus of my project to be the people. And so I brought in a Black bedsheet and my camera and rocked and rolled, and got some really beautiful, casual, simple moments of them just smiling. And even though I wasn't able to collect any more this semester, I wanted to utilize them somehow. So I implemented them into a social media campaign. And I first laid out the color grid and then adopted it into the actual Instagram. You can also notice that the brand colors are used in the highlights. But overall, I am just super excited with where this has all been going. And I want to plug Mason Bjorley, because he is a freshman at Iowa State right now, and he's right now applying for industrial design. But one of his hobbies, and this just goes to show diverse people, one of his hobbies is music. And so when I reached out to him about this podcast, I asked if he'd be interested in doing an intro outro for the D podcast. And I want to share with you really quick the music he came up with.
What's up, everyone? My name is Jordan Brooks, he, him, his, and I'm the Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Multicultural Student Success in the College of Design, and this is Diverse People of Design.
Solid. Awesome.
What's up, everyone? My name is Jordan Brooks, he, him, his, and I'm the Director of Equity, Inclusion.
If you're curious about learning more about diverse people of design, don't forget to check out our SoundCloud for our other podcast. It's / diverse people of design, or we got Instagram, diverse people of design, or diverse pod on Twitter and Facebook. And lastly, if you love us and you'd like to support us on Patreon, you can also find us there. So all in all, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day, and we'll catch you in the next one. See ya.
So I wanted to use and incorporate just as much from all these different types of people as I could to really showcase who they were. And overall, so my capstone at this present moment really incorporates the MARC, the podcast, and the campaign, as well as just my own personal experience and research that I've made. And if you're curious about learning more, if you're curious about being on diverse people design, anything like that, I have so many ideas of how to build on this, whether it's through a directory website, going back to those video interviews and photographs, larger branding, and also a lot of print materials. But you can also check out my portfolio website, or that's my personal Instagram handle. And if you missed all the diverse people of design handles in that outro because the music was just bomb, you can just rewind and listen to it again. But overall, that is diverse people of design. So thanks for listening.
Great, Kaitlyn. Thanks so much. Look forward to seeing all the future guests that you're going to have on that as you continue to push those stories out. It's really fantastic. All right, so if you want to unshare your screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Should be up towards the top.
There it is.
Going to go to the top and yeah. And then Brandon, you can turn on your video and share your screen.
All right. Stop. Alrighty. Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Johnson. And before I dive into my project, I'm going to show you a visual of what I'm trying to achieve and why this is important. So it's commonly thought that people with dyslexia can't read. Truth is, we all see the same thing. We just read it all differently, which can be hard for those to understand who don't have dyslexia because they don't experience this the same way dyslexics do. So that's where my project comes in. After a large amount of research and my own experience of having dyslexia, I created Dysoptic, which is the Dyslexia Awareness Toolkit. The goal of this is to provide a visual way to understand dyslexia. And this is important because research tends to be huge amounts of text-based information. There are large amounts of books and documents that are out there that are all text-heavy, but are minimal to no visuals. And that's a problem for those who are visual learners and people who have dyslexia, because sometimes, depending on the person, a large amount of text can be intimidating for those who are trying to read and end up not reading this large amount of text. So the goal of my project is to create this visual way of learning, targeting parents, homeschooling families, and educators. Now, actually getting into my project, this is the mark I created. I wanted it to represent both the letters B and D, since these are some of the most common flipped letters when having dyslexia. And I animated showing the versions of it shifting from the B to the D, but having my still be the middle of it. Oops. So getting into the actual branding, the color palette I chose is blue because in color theory, oftentimes blue represents trust, and I want both educators and families to be able to trust the content I'm creating, as well as I wanted to design a pattern that's based off my mark that I'll be using throughout my systems. So let's go ahead and get started into the actual content of the toolkit. So I did create a zine, and yes, this is very much text-based, but the point of this is to have a simple understanding of what dyslexia is, the history of it, and why it's not a disability as some people like to claim it to be. And moving forward, to help promote the toolkit, I created a poster that will be hung up in schools and classrooms. The idea of this is to help promote dyslexia as a positive thing versus a negative, because sometimes dyslexia can be considered a negative thing, when in reality it's actually more of a positive. But let's get more into the interesting things, which is the visual way of how I'm trying to show this. So I created 4 different animation visual worksheets. They're supposed to go over and demonstrate different types of dyslexia. Every person with dyslexia experiences this differently. So I create animations that broadly show these different types to help give a general understanding of what they're experiencing. So how this works is at the top, there's an indication of the type of dyslexia. In the middle is the animation that's actually visualizing what's happening. And in the bottom is a description of the form of dyslexia. So it talks about kind of the definition of it and trying to explain what the animation is showing through text. So we're going to start off with phonological dyslexia, which in short is trouble decoding or assessing words based on their sounds. There's a struggle to connect the connection between the sound and the letter symbols that sound makes. So the idea behind this is that the letter F, the sound that makes can be portrayed with 3 different types of forms, which is the letter F, PH, and GH. I used photograph because the word photograph uses the F sound twice, but it is spelled with the PH. And the point of this was to have a kind of like a jackpot slot. So the different letter combinations are sliding in and out until they finally hit the correct letter form of how you correctly spell it. Next is rapid naming dyslexia, which is trouble naming letters, numbers, and colors off fast. Another big effect of this is the processing speed. When reading fast, it's common to forget things you read or skip over words. This often leads to rereading to try to understand or rereading at a much lower pace to try understanding what you just missed or read. So I tried to replicate this by having a small paragraph where certain letters and phrases will either disappear or quickly, or not even load, to help represent the idea of skipping over or missing something. And at the very end, it comes back so you can read what you missed. Next is surface level dyslexia. This is pretty close to phonological dyslexia, but the difference is being that there's a struggle recognizing the word as a whole. The pronunciation rules are really relied on trying to sound out the words, and struggle when words don't follow these rules. And they also tend to break words into syllables. So what I did was I took the word beautiful, and for the longest time, I considered beautiful being 4 syllables instead of 3, which is why I moved the U out to be a whole new syllable. And I replaced all of the E sounds with the double E, because when I was growing up, one of the first pronunciation rules I learned was that the double E makes the E sounds. And so when it switches to the double E's, it realizes that there's too many E's and that's not how it's spelled correctly. So full gets pushed out of the way, and until it's spelled correctly, it'll come back and form the correct word and spelling. And then the last one is letter form dyslexia, or letter reversal dyslexia. This is the most common trait thought of when you think about dyslexia. This is reversing letters, numbers, and words when reading. So I chose the letters B, P, Q, and D, which are some of the most common due to being almost the exact same shape. It's just where the little circle is located on these letters. But with all this in mind, the point of Dysoptic is that it helps fill in the missing gap of not having a visual understanding of what dyslexia is. Thank you.
All right, great job, Brandon. Really nice work. All right, so Kaitlyn and Brandon, if you want to hop back on, I'll turn me on too. Here we go. So we got a couple of questions in the comments from YouTube, which is great. So the first one, it's a comment for Kaitlyn. Kayla says, "I love the colors you used on your Instagram. So can you talk a little bit more about like how you resolved to those colors and what kind of drove your final decision? I know you went through several different possibilities.
Yeah, so I think a really common thing for diversity from just the research I did was either a rainbow or shades of browns and oranges. And I wanted something that would incorporate, um, again, to not get too affiliated with one particular group or another. I wanted something that was more not generic, but more would have a larger umbrella. And I love the blue orange duo. I think it's a very strong color palette. And then the maroon, like I said, came in a little bit later, but it was to boost the high contrast between the other lighter colors that we had.
Yeah, nice. All right, and then there's a comment here for you, Brandon. It's from Casey. It says, I think your animations are really successful when it comes to showcasing what dyslexia is like. And part of what I think is really valuable about that is what you're doing is trying to share with someone else how a different person perceives the world. And the translation of that perception is quite a challenge. How did you decide on the ones that you end up making the animations for?
Yes, so the few that I made for, as of right now, are the ones I actually relate to and experience a lot of. It's something I've struggled with most of my life, and I've just like, it's something that I'm just kind of used to and I understand. So being able to do the research and like getting a full grasp of the definition has helped me then go into how I read things or how like it affects me, and I'm able to, because I can visually see it myself, like I can do my best to try to recreate that in a way for people to understand.
Nice. Yeah, and so that like that level of research and investigation, I think really comes through in those animations where you had to have a really clear understanding of what they were, and even the ability, which is a really strong characteristic of a designer, the ability to move outside of their own perception to be able to understand something, to then make something that communicates to somebody else. So I think that worked really well really well in yours, Brandon, and I think that also translates to yours, Kaitlyn, where you are working to help people understand different perspectives. You're helping people understand like the value of diversity and the need for diversity in design, but also the specific sort of characteristics, interests, passions of the people that you interviewed. So one of the other comments for you, Kaitlyn, here related to that is from Jake, and he said, really good logos for Dpod. It must have been hard to choose. So again, like as you were going through that process, what drove your final decisions for those? How did you pick a mark essentially that represents diversity?
Well, as you saw, it was hard because I also have the different handwritings of the designers, as you saw in the welcome promo. But every time I tried to implement those handwritings into some sort of like Instagram or Facebook profile, like square picture, it didn't quite fit right with the branding, the way that the colors and the typeface were working on the Instagram grid, for example. There was just a disconnect for me. And so I needed something that was more representative of the podcast itself. So that's how I kind of ended up with not using the handwriting, but the handwriting is still super core. And then all of the other logos are so many different explorations of different ways how diversity can be shown as some sort of icon or mark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice. Yeah, there are several compliments in here to the quality of the animation and the way that you work through. So Brandon, did you have any were there any like specific moments or anything that you were really focused on as you made those, in terms of like the thing that you were hoping would be like a takeaway from your program for either a person who was implementing it or a person who was learning from it?
Yeah, so I would really try focusing on making sure I'm actually achieving what I'm trying to show. And I would do that by, I would communicate with some of my design friends who aren't dyslexic be like, hey, I'm trying to do this. What do you think of this animation? Or I'll show my family and I'll be like, hey, what do you think? And like, does this come across how it's supposed to be? So I was really trying to like get others' opinions who aren't dyslexic, because I want them, they're the main audience, is trying to get them to understand what it is. So I like really tried focusing on that.
Nice. And I think that came through in your printed work as well. Like seeing the image of the zine where you had very intentionally flipped like a D and a B, where you are making a printed material with the, like, what's the right way to say this? You're intentionally making it with mistakes so that somebody who isn't, doesn't have that version or that portion of dyslexia is then experiencing it. And again, you're not just like telling someone about it, you're actually like demonstrating it through their experience. And I think that as a communication tactic is really valuable. So then Kaitlyn, like thinking about like how you're going to move forward, or the ways in which this sort of like podcast and this experience has come together. What do you think would be like a primary takeaway for an audience that you would hope somebody would leave your podcast with?
My main hope is to, in a way, promote all of these other designers. I would love to start incorporating people that I don't know as well or at all. That way they get to share their story equally as well. And I hope that people listen to it and can feel inspired or feel some sort of empathy or connection, whether or not they share any similar identities, just because I think that that's a really powerful human connection that we can have. And another thing that I omitted was the accessibility portion. If you visit the Diverse People of Design Instagram and you click and you read the caption on any of the photos, something that was really important to me because of someone I follow named Molly Burke. She is blind. And so in all of her photos for accessibility, she incorporates a photo description. And so when applicable, or like for all of my pictures, I incorporate a visual description, but when applicable, I also incorporate an audio description in the posts themselves, which I just think is super important and should be more widely implemented.
Yeah, and I think that that accessibility question is a really incredibly valuable one, and I think that's one that you're both addressing. Is how do you make information more accessible? How do you make opportunities more accessible? How do you make sure that there's sort of as many processes in place as possible to sort of help as many people as possible, whether it's through communication or through opportunity. There's another comment here in the Zoom chat from Stephen, and it says, Kaitlyn, I dig all the ties to the design college and being able to go out from there. So from the music and the people that you interviewed. So that seems like you sort of just mentioned it in your most recent answer, this idea that it's starting with kind of the amazing, talented people who but that it has legs, right? It has the potential to grow to different people. And so we'll make sure that like there's information related to this video, and then also like on you'll be able to link it from your page, and maybe people who are interested in this can continue to reach out and sort of ask questions and participate in that way. Cool. Let's see. Oh, there's another one here. This is from Renee, and this is from Renee Maines. She is saying the world needs more designers who care about accessibility, and then there are 3 applause emojis. So yeah, definite kudos on that. What do you think was like one of the biggest, either like maybe struggle is too strong of a word, but as you were sort of getting into the thick of your process, what was either one of you, like what was one of the kind of bigger hurdles that you found yourself wrestling with when you were kind of deciding on this topic and making those sort of first important steps?
For me, it was trying to figure out the like subclasses of dyslexia, because I was trying to do a whole bunch of different research of what the different types are. And I found one article from a professional who talked about how he practices in like diagnosing people, and how a lot of the research like fields that are out there contradict themselves. and that like they're finding different things what other people are. So there really is no subcategory of dyslexia. So trying to like narrow down what are the like kind of official types of dyslexia there are, and trying to like find the similar things to try really animating and learn about was a little bit difficult for me.
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of already answered it. It really is the branding, because I really do care about it feeling all-inclusive as a brand. It was difficult to nail down that exact concept in this particular case as a mark, for sure.
Yeah, and then sort of one of the other things that both of your topics have me thinking about, and both of your answers have me thinking about, is this idea of empathy and the role that designers play, not just in communication and promotion and distribution of information, but really in like being empathetic towards a variety of different sort of audiences and means and intention. So do either of you have any thoughts on how like the role that empathy played in how you started to wrap this up as you sort of get towards this very final stage of your student career?
Yeah, I am an empath. I just care so much about people, which is why I, as a woman of color, but I'm also white passing, I understand, and I've heard a lot, and especially through being involved through the Multicultural Student Affairs Office at Iowa State, there's so much to learn about marginalized communities, but I also didn't want to exclude anyone. And so that's where just the ability to potentially connect people, and hopefully maybe someone has a project that they want to hire out, and it is about some sort of social design, and they're looking for someone with particular identities. That's where it could become a really valuable resource, I think, for designers in general to be able to get connected to clients. And that's really where the empathy part for me comes in, is the hope of human connection.
Nice.
I guess for my case and my project, it's definitely showing something that people might not really truly understand if they don't have it, and trying to emphasize this type of thing people live with that can be very much misunderstood, or like just not really known about, because no one, either they didn't know much about it beforehand, or just they don't have it, so they don't know what it's like to really experience this, or what it's like to live with, because we live with it our whole lives. It's not something that can be cured or just goes away.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So another question came in from YouTube, and I think this is for Brandon, but I think you could both answer it. And it says, ideally, where would you like to see your project applied in the world?
That is a good one. I would say somewhere in like a school program, for sure, starting to implement that and really teaching educators and students about like more about dyslexia, but also those who are really wanting to switch to homeschooling, and being able for a resource online for those parents who want to be able to educate their kids who may have dyslexia and they don't understand themselves how this dyslexia works, or like how it really affects their child. So giving them that insight can really help them then transition to a homeschooling situation.
Yeah, and resources for homeschooling have suddenly become incredibly important, and there's for some amount of foreseeable future going to be potentially quite valuable, and this could really help people who sort of function outside of the that sort of like standard A to B to C structure. Yeah, nice. How about you, Kaitlyn? Thoughts?
Can you repeat the question? It's application.
Yeah. Yeah, the question was, ideally, where would you like to see your project applied in the world?
Yeah, I think I really want to see a full-fledged website. Actually, when I started brainstorming this 2 years ago, I already have a team, and I'm so excited about them because they are just as passionate about this project as I am. And so it includes Kaden Jones, John Sand, and Jamil Kelly. So Kaitlyn and John are both graphic designers. Kaitlyn's a senior, and I believe that John is a sophomore. And I am thrilled to be working with them, as well as Jamil is our software engineer, so he's going to be coding and building our website. And it's just such an exciting momentum to get ready to go into a real business, especially graduating now.
Nice. So that leads me to another comment from Casey, which was for you, Kaitlyn, and it's just a question that says, do you plan on continuing your podcast, which it sounds like yes, and if so, where could they find it?
Yeah, so because you guys are all watching this, by Saturday, I already have one posted now, but by Saturday, I'll have a few more sneak peek podcasts on the YouTube channel, so Diverse People of Design on YouTube. But otherwise on SoundCloud, Diverse People of Design, I'll be posting one a month. And already post-graduation, I already have 2 more podcast interviews lined up. And I'm anticipating getting more. So I am not giving up on this. I am very excited to continue.
Excellent. There's a comment for you, Brandon, and it says, this is from Brian, and it says, I'm sure Decoding Dyslexia Iowa, which is a volunteer group that advocates for kids with dyslexia, would love to hear about your project. So that could be a good resource. Maybe we could figure out if there's a way to reach out to them, or if the commenter has a connection. And then the other one is a compliment. This is from Professor Sherry. It says, I'm impressed that even with dyslexia, you tackle very text-heavy projects and do them well, which serves as a good model to inspire others. So good job being out there and inspiring people to sort of work through and push forward. It's really great. And I think you're both doing that. So that brings us to the end of the comments and the questions. So I think with that, thank you both for your really thoughtful and thought-provoking projects. You did a fantastic job of explaining them, but also I want to commend you on how resilient you were through the process to figure out like how things needed to change given the sort of condition that we're all figuring out and dealing with. And you did a really nice job of taking this important work and moving it into a space where people can still continue to experience it. So thanks for that. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out with me and letting me chat with you about it for a bit here. For everybody tuning in, our next panel is at 5 o'clock. So in about 20 minutes, it'll be right on the same channel. And that panel is on social design. It's social design 2 of 2. And so that'll be very exciting. Also, you can check out isugd.com, and all the seniors will have their capstone projects posted on isugd.com/2020 senior show. So you can check out the entire senior show there. Thanks again to Kaitlyn and Brandon. Thanks to all of the commenters on YouTube and in Zoom. Really appreciate you guys. And hopefully I'll see you again in just a few short minutes.